as well. When we come back, we'll talk about more high strangeness in Scotland on Coast to Coast AM. I love those Scottish accents, by the way.
I do, too.
They are just so pristine. So now this other story is a strange one because Scotland doesn't get a lot of abduction cases, does it?
No, and this was the very first that Malcolm knew on record. And if you go back just to October of 2009, which is just, the fall, STV TV in Scotland, they did an update on what we're going to hear from Malcolm, and they called it Scotland's biggest UFO incident is being made into a film, depicting the story of two men who claim they were abducted from their car on the A70 road in West Lothian in 1992. So this was a kind of breaking entertainment news story that made the headlines in Scotland in October. We wouldn't know that in the United States, but in working on this story, I'm learning that something like a feature film is going to be made on this story that you all are going to hear tonight. And it started with two men, one named Gary Wood, the other Colin Wright. The date was August 17th, 1992, so it's 4 years before the one in Fife County that we heard in the previous half hour. These men were driving from Edinburgh around 8 p.m. in the evening toward the village of Tarbrax on the A70 when they encountered a black aerial disc. That may seem strange, but as Malcolm said, they emphasized it was black and it was night. But it was so shiny and something was coming off of it that they could see it clearly over the road near what is called Herrickpurig Reservoir in the Lothian district of central Scotland. And they know from their friends in Tarbrax they lost 90 minutes of time. Here now, again, is Malcolm Robinson.
They were then catapulted into the twilight zone, travelling down this darkened road late at night. And then Colin, who was in the passenger seat, said to Gary, "What's that?" And Colin pointed out of the windscreen of the car directly in front of the vehicle, 200 feet or so from the car, was this very shiny, disc-shaped object hovering about 20 feet above the surface of the road. And they knew that this wasn't conventional aircraft. Whatever this was truly bizarre. Rather than stop the car, they decided, what the hell, let's just drive underneath this thing.
What shape are they seeing?
Well, they said it was a disc-shaped object, flying saucer, but like two soup plates joined rim to rim, and a smaller cupola on top of that. But it was very shiny black. It was jet black. And even though it was a dark night, the illumination from the car's headlights was shining upon it, and you could really see that it was a structured object.
Did they estimate how high above the car and what the size might have been in relationship to the road?
It's around about 35 feet in length. The reason they got that was because the tips of the side of this disc-shaped object was slightly coming over the grass verge on each side of the road.
And how far from their car?
From their car, it was only about 30, 40 yards away, and it was about 20 to 25 feet above the surface of the road. Now, as they drove underneath this object emitted like a heavy silver shimmering, it was like heavy silver snowflakes descended from the bottom of this object and hit the car. And as soon as this sparkling light effect hit the car, both men were enveloped in total and inky blackness. They couldn't see their hand in front of their face. They couldn't see the dashboard of the car. They couldn't see each other. Where the hell are we? They really, really thought that they were dead. They thought they were dead. That's exactly what Gary Wood said to me. "Malcolm, we thought we really did." Seconds later, or for them, what appeared to be seconds later, they had regained their sight. They could see once more. The car was shuddering very, very violently on the road, as if a big hand had lifted the car up 2 inches and dropped it back down 2 inches, trying to gain control of the car. And they just sped off in the direction of a friend's house in this village of Tarbrax. And they knocked on the occupant's door, and Katrina, the friend of Gary's, opened the door. "Where the hell have you been?" And she said that they were an hour and a half late. The journey should only have taken them 35 minutes from Edinburgh to Tarbrax, and they were an hour and a half later than that. And they burst in the door, and they just said, "Oh, my God, you'll never believe what we've just encountered. You'll never believe what we have just seen." And they proceeded to tell Katrina and her husband Ian all the things that they had seen on this road. That night, and nights thereafter, they had strange, bizarre dreams of this grey alien's face, call it what you will, coming into their dream world. And then they found scars on their body. And these were fresh scars that previously were not there.
What part of their bodies were the scars?
Were on their chest, their arm, and in Colin's case, on the base of his penis. They got in touch with me, and I invited them over to my house for a face-to-face interview. At that interview, I said to both gentlemen, I said, "Amazing stuff. Now, do you want to get to the truth?" "Absolutely. Of course we do. We need to know what happened, Malcolm. We'll do anything." "Are you prepared independently to go under hypnotic regression just to see if perhaps something else happened to you that night?" Please, yeah, we'll do it. We employed the services of a very qualified hypnotherapist, and independently we took them back to that night, and your typical abduction scenario unfolded. Under the black, inky almond-shaped eyes of these beings were red, yellow, and green perforations, like if you can imagine a fish and the fish's gills, these slits in its body. They were like slits under its eyes, coloured red, yellow, and green. Some of these creatures were your typical greys, your 3.5 to 4 feet tall greys, childlike body, large pear-shaped heads, almond-shaped eyes. Others were taller, about 7 to 8 feet, and they were small brown beings. Small, not large, brown, scrunched-up faces. Some of these small greys had indentations at the top of their head. So if you can imagine a heart shape that they said that they saw. And Colin, at one point, found himself encased in this large glass cylinder. Imagine a man's cigar tube. Imagine that about 12 feet high, encased in glass. Colin found himself in one of those, completely naked, and suddenly this object came out of the floor of this craft towards his eyes and started to rotate and rotate and rotate. And then suddenly this glass, or whatever it was, froze up, instantaneous. And at this point, Colin started to cry, and as soon as he showed some emotion, it stopped freezing up and it just went back to normal. But Colin says, "Malcolm, I couldn't move. I could only move my eyes. And what I could see to my left and to my right were about a dozen or so similar tubes or canisters with other naked people sitting in there. I definitely saw that, Malcolm." Gary Wood says, "Malcolm, floating in the ceiling of this room was this lens-shaped device. I don't know what it was, Malcolm," he said. "It was about 3-4 feet across, free-floating in the room, and I was absolutely mesmerized by it. I'm just looking at it. What on earth is this? What function is this doing? What's this all about, And suddenly he became aware, like a pool